Hey, Boat Dragons. I'm so glad you joined me today. We're going to be talking about the 10 longest books that I have read. And I got this idea from Joanna over at Joanna Reads. She did a similar video where she talked about the 10 longest books that she has read and whether or not she was happy she read them. And I'm kind of stealing that idea. I hope that's okay, Joanna. And so, yeah, we're going to get right to this list. The first thing I want to do is do some honorable mentions. And these are series that would have had way too many books on this list and taken up the whole list. So I just did them as honorable mentions, okay? And the first one I'm going to talk about is the Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson. All 5 of these books are over 1,000 pages, and when I was looking through the longest books I've read on Goodreads, almost all of them, no, actually all of them showed up in that list. And so I just took them out and I made them an honorable mention because I want a chance for other books to end up on that list. So this is the way I'm doing it. Another one I'll talk about here is A Song of Ice and Fire by George R. R. Martin. I just grabbed the third book, Storm of Swords, because it's my favorite of the series so far. And this is not a series where all the books are over 1,000 pages, but several of them are, and almost all of them showed up in the top 10, so I moved them aside to put them as an honorable mention. And I'm sticking to that plan. And then the last honorable mention I want to talk about is The Realm of the Elderlings by Robin Hobb. I just grabbed the first book in the Live Ship Traders series. And this entire series is full of long books. Not all of them are, but most of them are. And so I set that aside as an honorable mention, as I am wont to do. And let's get my eyes on here, because we are now ready to do the top 10 books that are on my list of the longest books I have read. And we're going to start this list with The Stand by Stephen King. That comes in at 1,348 pages. Oh my goodness, guys. I knew that I don't do long books by Stephen King well, and so I immediately did this one on audiobook. Okay? I had originally read it and tried to read it in physical form, and I couldn't get through it, so I switched to audio there. So I just immediately switched to The Stand on audio. And this book was not a great experience for me. I really did not enjoy it. There were parts of it I liked, but overall it was just way too long and drawn out, and some of it was boring, honestly. The climax of the story was lackluster for me, and I would never read it again. I don't know if it was worth my time reading it in the first place, but it's one of those Stephen King books that everybody says you have to read. So I gave it a shot. I did read it, and oh well, it wasn't for me, and that's okay. We're going to move on now to The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien, and this comes in at 1,216 pages. And I am absolutely happy that I read this book. It's one of my favorite books of all time, and I read it over the space of a summer when I was a young dad. And so, I had other things going on. That's why it took me as long as it did. But I eventually got through it, and I'm really happy I did. I had already seen the first movie before I ever picked up the book, and I absolutely loved the book. So much better than the movies, although that's not to say the movies aren't good. They are amazing. They're some of my favorite movies of all time. And, the only movies that exist are the extended cuts. I don't even acknowledge anything else. That's the only way to watch the Lord of the Rings movies. But this book is really something special, and I absolutely love it to death. All right, so we're moving on to It by Stephen King. I briefly mentioned it at the beginning. I did not like it. It comes in at 1,166 pages. Another book that did not need to be that long. And there were things that he could have left out of that book, should have left out of that book, if we're being honest. And if you know, you know. Um, Again, he could have cut out several hundred pages and it would have been a better book, I personally think. So I like the movies. Those are my favorite version of the story because it's concise, it tells a good story. Um, it's the best version of Stephen King's story, in my opinion. I know that's unpopular, and that's okay. I'm sticking to my guns. All right, so we're moving on to Shogun by James Clavell. That comes in at 1,152 pages. And guys, I absolutely loved Shogun. It was such a wonderful surprise for me. It is my favorite book of 2025 so far. And I am so happy I took a chance with it because I don't really read historical fiction normally. But I took a chance with Shogun and it was amazing. I absolutely loved it. And I think that's because it had a lot going for it. I really liked that era of Japan's history with the samurai and things like that. So I just really ate it up. And I'm so glad that I read it. And so yes, that's number 4. Number 5 is Wizard and Glass. That comes in at 1,041 pages. And that is book 4 in the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. See, I do like some Stephen King. It's an absolutely amazing series. I enjoyed all the books, although Wizard and Glass is my favorite of the series. And there were parts of it that probably shouldn't have worked for me. There was an extended Western sequence in the book that really shouldn't have worked for me, but for some reason it did. And so, yeah, I absolutely love it. It's fantastic. The next one on this list is The Wise Man's Fear by Patrick Rothfuss. This is book 2 in the Kingkiller Chronicles. And that comes in at 994 pages. And I really, really enjoyed this book. Not quite as much maybe as I enjoyed The Name of the Wind, but I still really enjoyed The Wise Man's Fear. There were some elements in it that maybe could have been cut down a little bit. A lot of people talk about that Fey human sex scene, and yeah, it's a bit longer than it should be, and probably a little bit more detailed than it should be. But it's good overall. The book is good overall, and so yeah, I really enjoyed reading this book, and I'm waiting for book 3. Next one on this list is Wolves of the Kala by Stephen King. This is book 5 in the Dark Tower series, and this is another favorite of mine. I really enjoyed the Wolves of the Kala, and it's just got so many weird elements. This is where the genre blends really hit hard in a lot of respects. There's other genre blends throughout the series, but this has a ton of just really like sci-fi elements and different callbacks and things like that. So, and there's crossover with other Stephen King books. This is probably the most stark crossover with a Stephen King book because it crosses over with Salem's Lot. If you have not read Salem's Lot and you don't want spoilers, you don't want to read Wolves of the Kala until you've read Salem's Lot. I'm just saying. There's character crossovers and there's information that you'll get about Salem's Lot in Wolves of the Kala. So, yeah. But it's a fantastic book, and I'm really glad I read that one. The next one on this list is Dead House Gates by Steven Erikson, and this comes in at 868 pages. You know, I don't know if I said how many pages Wolves of the Kala is. That one comes in at 960. Okay, so Dead House Gates, 868 pages, and I did not like this book. Pretty much at all. The ending was okay, but I struggled hard. I almost DNF'd this book I was just so bored. I did not relate to any of the characters. I didn't really care about what any of the characters were going through. There was one character that popped up that had been in Gardens of the Moon that I was like, oh, there she is. That's cool. But I don't know. Overall, I didn't care for it. There were some revelations that we got that were very interesting to me that do make me want to try and continue the series and find out more. But yeah, I wouldn't reread Dead House Gates. We'll put it that way. Outlander by Diana Gabaldon. This comes in at 850 pages. And this book was just okay. It was more of a historical romance than anything. And I don't read romance. I was initially drawn to it because of the sci-fi elements, time travel elements, really. So that was kind of interesting, but that was only at the beginning of the book, and then it just kind of petered off into this long historical romance, and I'm going, yeah, it's not really for me. It was fine. I liked it overall, but I wouldn't read it again, and I'm not going to continue the series. The final book on this list is an anthology, actually, and that is the Rogues Anthology, coming in at 806 pages. And this isn't something I would normally go ahead and put on this list because it's a bunch of short stories, but there's some really important short stories in there. For instance, The Lightning Tree by Patrick Rothfuss, which eventually became what we know now as The Narrow Road Between Desires. He took The Lightning Tree and expanded it and made it into a full novella. And I enjoyed reading that in the original Rogues Anthology. And I have yet to read The Narrow Road, but I do eventually want to read it and see what changed or what was expanded. So the Rogues Anthology is really great. I really hope you guys will check it out. I don't really read a lot of anthologies usually, but this one was definitely worth my time. So that is the top 10 books that are the longest books that I have read. Let me know some of yours in the comments below. Maybe tell me what was the longest book you have ever read, and you can tell me others as well. And let me know what you thought of my list and some of my choices and some of my thoughts in these books. I'd love to discuss it with you. And if you'd like to watch more of my content, there are cards here at the end of the video you can check out. And until next time, make sure you read more books. I'll talk with you soon.